Let's get it started.
Double O.
Think like a rapper.
There we go.
Oh man, what up, man? What's going on?
Chilling. Man, this is dope. I never did one of these before.
Oh yeah, let's get it. All right, this is Think Like a Rapper, episode 107, and I'm here with the professional man of leisure. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
the man, the myth, the legend, Woodie White. How are you doing
Thank
today,
you for
sir?
having me, sir. Thank you.
Ah.
Thank you.
Oh man, it's it's funny because we were supposed to have I was supposed to have you on when it was the other podcast name, but I feel like either way it works, I think that we'll still get kind of out of this what we want. How have you been? How have you been holding up in all of this?
Oh, I'm wonderful. It's interesting. My life, I was telling somebody this recently, only consists of a couple things nowadays. Wake up, go to the gym, do whatever sort of exercise in the morning, go to the office, work all day, finish up, maybe stop by somebody's house on the way, burn one, then go home. Weekends play a little bit of tennis, but it's pretty much a hamster wheel life to some degree. Still creating, but I'm not going to clubs. I'm not going to day parties anymore. So that type of stuff for me is kind of like, oh, well, it's over, at least for now. But life really hasn't changed that much for me.
Okay. So, but even obviously you haven't part of that routine, you're not necessarily able to do, right? Being able to go to the office and all that sort of shit. So,
Right. Well, I took all my fabric swatches home, like it's interesting because we had things coming out of production over the last like 1 or 2 weeks, that we were going to get ready to drop for spring. Fortunately, we don't make a ton of stuff. So I'm not sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of inventory and then all of a sudden couldn't ship it. I've been doing like a pre-sale to friends and family, which that was going pretty well. So I wasn't on the red in anything coming for spring 2020, but it kind of is like, I can't go to the office. I don't want to I feel weird hitting my sewers, asking them, are they working? Like, hey,
yeah.
are you working? Because then I feel like I'm being insensitive to everything that's going on, so I pretty much put a halt on anything. I'm not trying to sell product. I'm not interested in like pushing product on people or anything like that, especially because our whole thing is traveling as a sport,
Yeah.
So for us, you can't really travel right now. So it makes less sense.
Yeah, I was actually two things, just to be very specific to people when we're talking about the clothing company that Woody runs. We're talking about Oyster Holdings, right?
Yes,
I
thank
assume
you.
that's
I know I just jumped right into that.
Yeah,
Without
no, all good. And its tagline, interestingly, is traveling is a sport. And this is, I know, been a thing for you for a minute. So even with that, like when I was moving out to New York, I remember, I feel like at the same exact time we were both doing these very interesting sort of road trips. Like you were in the Defender, buying random boots from Walmart in I don't know where you were, North Dakota somewhere.
Man, we hit Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona. Where else? Minnesota. There's got to be somewhere else in there that I just can't remember offhand. But yeah, I mean, we really did like America, on that run, and most places I hadn't been before. Which I felt like was a prep for everything that's going on now, of just not thinking about going overseas, not worried about being with like a bunch of people kicking it. I was on the road New Year's. I spent New Year's in Rawlings, North Carolina, like literally in a motel New Year's Eve, right? And I remember thinking to myself, man, this fucking sucks. Like, I'm not with my girl. I'm not with my friends. I'm not with my family. I'm not doing anything. Well, I'm with one friend who's taking the road trip back with me. Yeah. Right. And then I got some really interesting words of encouragement from a few friends of like, yo, you need to document this. Like, you need to just start like posting the whole trip. And it really gave me a different outlook on travel from that point, because I realized we were embodying what the whole traveling as a sport meant real time. Like, it wasn't about luxury flights. It wasn't about, look at this fucking 5-star hotel I'm in. Like, a lot of that shit is not relatable to people, you know? But at the same time, when you're going through Iowa on, what freeway were we on? Like 90 or something like that?
Yeah.
Yo, there is no Four
80.
Seasons.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what
no,
I'm saying?
not at all.
There's none of that shit. It's like, what do you want to choose from? Best Westin, Motel 6, Holiday Inn. I mean, they're all sort of the same thing, right? So at that point, I realized, like, man, we are actually in the space that we've always wanted to be, you know? And that sort of changed my outlook getting back to LA on how I was going to approach 2020 anyway.
What was the impetus for that travel anyway? I mean, we've done, when you used to work at LRG, we've done amazing trips up the California coast, and you've always had like the ability to really power certain brands culturally like that in these very interesting spaces. But why was that different than anything before it, that trip specifically?
Well, I think now, you know, like having my own thing, Oyster, and looking around in the world that we're in now, where everybody, I won't say everybody has a brand, but you have a brand, and then you have the person behind the brand and the positioning of them and how that dictates the success of the brand, you know? And I'm not really one for all the fan club stuff, or like just putting myself in a position where I'm trying to make myself bigger than what I am. I'm just like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And so what I discovered on this is everything we've been talking about over the years that relates to Oyster, or even when we were working together at LR and I was planning trips and photo shoots and location shoots, and everything was like from the side of the hip, as you know, like, you know, we didn't have like planned shots set up or anything. That it all sort of came together on this piece that made me realize, okay, my position in this is not like fashion designer extraordinaire, guy who did all this. It's really more of like the person who is relatable, who travels, but does it just like you would. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking for a deal. I'm looking for the really good spots. I'm looking to explore. I'm looking for the good meals, you know, and that's what that trip ended up being, is like great bond with a friend in a car, you know, a ton of random conversations, looking for like, you know, the best food along the way, looking for some good weed, like, but also hitting places that I would never think I would experience before. So like Rawlings, Wyoming. No, in the last year, all anybody talked about with Wyoming was what Ye is doing up there.
Yeah.
But we weren't up in Jackson Hole in luxury Wyoming.
Yeah.
We were in the sticks. You know what I'm saying? And it was a totally different feel. But the people were wonderful. You know, the hospitality, or the people were wonderful. The food was wonderful. You know, the whole thing with Walmart and the shopping for like boots and shit. Like, I've been to Walmart before. My mom lives in Indiana.
Yeah.
But I'd never explored Walmart. You know what I'm saying? But when you stuck and you ain't got shit to do, man, let me just go on this Walmart tour. Then I realized I wasn't the only one who did that, because New Year's Day, that evening, we were sitting in the hotel because the roads were closed. We still couldn't get back on the road. And I was talking to one of these truckers, and I told him, hey, we're going to go over to this place, Cactus Jack's, to go get some wings. I was like, what are you going to do? And I guess I was saying Cactus Jack's, and we're going to go get some wings. He may want to join us. The man told us he was going to go hang out in Walmart. That's what the trucker was going to do. I'm going to go see what's happening in Walmart. And I was like, damn, okay. All right, Walmart's a thing. All right, you know what I'm saying? So it's funny the pleasures you find in small towns and the unfamiliar, you know?
But to connect that all back to right now, the craziest thing right now in this time where every thrift store, every Marshalls, most retail spots are all closed. Spots that you might have just jumped in real quick to see what they had in there, see if you could find some jewels. Walmart, Target are the things that are standard open all the time now. And it's funny because but it's funny going there now because it's like this different feeling in there, because this is the place where you literally are just like, if you wanted to just go to the Grove, which is a outdoor mall in LA, on a Saturday because it was nice outside, like you didn't have to worry about buying anything. You might, maybe I'll stop, get some food, whatever, but you just went there just to kind of like, I'm a right. And now that is not an option. Yeah, and that's not an option. And Walmart and Target are the options now. And it's so funny because I see people, number one, Walmart shoppers, Target shoppers, please actually practice social distancing right now because you're not. But like everybody's there just roaming around and just looking at everything, trying to just kill time because that is the only thing that is around. So it is very interesting because I feel like somebody was saying this before when they were talking about grocery stores, and they were talking about the world at large, which was kind of this idea that we got real sexy and thought like, oh yeah, I can just go to this Whole Foods real quick and go pick up some quinoa by the pound and whatever. And now we're entering into these spaces where not only is it dangerous to go to the Whole Foods, but half the shit there is empty, right? Like all of these places. So you go in thinking you want something, and then you got to make all kinds of options. And this food scarcity thing is much more real, I think, for people now than it has been before. And just like you were saying, you travel in all these parts of the country, places that just don't have anything, or places where you might think that the truck stop clothing section or a random sort of thrift shop has cool shit in it, but they're tired of that already because their aunt works there. But Walmart is still kind of like the beacon of hope for them to find cool shit. And it's like the whole country now is on the same tip. And I'm glad that at the same time you were doing that, I went on a straight solo mission because I was driving back to New York and just decided to do it as slow as I could and camp as much as I could.
You drove back from LA to New York?
Yep. Damn. Yep. Yeah, I packed what I said, I'm gonna, whatever fits on the Prius or in the Prius is the only thing that is coming. Like I used it as an opportunity to kind of like downsize. Yeah, exactly. And then use use that period driving to really kind of build a little bit of just to be solitary and be okay with that and be able to pull up to the Grand Canyon and camp on BLM free land and just be like, this is what I got. This is what I'm doing, on the way. And maybe it has prepared for this because I'm, was talking to people, and I feel like first we are in a very interesting industry where we've kind of had a good majority for a while of our time to ourselves to be able to kind of like build routines, like you said, through the day where you weren't on someone else's clock for at least a while now, where it's like, I gotta be there at 9 a.m., which means I gotta handle this, and this. Your bite-sized pieces of time weren't, you had much more flexibility. And I feel like now everybody's getting that and no one knows really what to do with it yet. Cause they're just like, wait a minute, round two. We got cut off. It's all good. Technical difficulties.
We're out here in the LA sunshine, so the phone overheated.
Yeah, it happens. But yeah, I was just saying, I think in general, we both kind of, at least over the last couple months, have had a little bit through traveling, had this very interesting sort of discovery that has, for better or worse, prepared us for this sort of scenario where being solitary, being away from people that you're kind of used to, it's like, oh, okay, like I know what that feels like. I can sit and live with that. And then having these sort of routines that have already been built off of us owning our time has been able for us to kind of work through it a little bit. And I think for what I would say for people that are listening that do work 9 to 5s and are now sitting at working from home or got kids and all that, like, discipline equals freedom. Like the having structure to your day, like you were talking about earlier, where it's like I get up, I do this, and then I go do this, and then I go do this, allows for all of the, I think, a less hectic life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to wake up during this quarantine period and go crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to wake up later. I've been getting more sleep, you know? Like, I wake up in the morning, I eat breakfast, I have my coffee, they close the gym, so I can't go to the gym. So I'll just do my little ab wheel and whatever in the house. Then I'll get on the bike, maybe eat lunch. But I make sure that I either ride my bike once a day or take a walk. As long as I do those things, I'm good. And I don't need to be out for more than 2 hours. And when I'm out, my walk is in a neighborhood. I'm not going to, it's in my neighborhood, which is already quiet, filled with a bunch of older Black people, So like, you'll see people walking around, but the streets aren't packed. You know what I'm saying? It's not like even the trails that are near my house, they're not like the trail. It's not like Runyon Canyon, where everybody probably went to Runyon Canyon as soon as all this stuff happened. Then you get to Runyon Canyon and it's like 800 people up there because that's the hot spot, And so it's interesting because now you have to be really selective on what you do, but it is the time to get one with yourself and just kind of, to me, this is a great time if you were a kid, because you love to be outside, you love to like just hang out, but you don't necessarily need to be at a park. You just need to be like outside getting some air. So all this stuff that I've been doing probably the last couple of days, like I went bird watching the other day, and looked at some ducks on this stream. And I'm going to go back again and go do the same thing. But this time I'm going to bring some little bread for the ducks and shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to get busy, because I'm like, man, what else is there to do? But I know myself well enough that I'm going to have a good time doing it. And I can probably spend like 3-4 hours right on a stream feeding ducks and be content with life and go home and feel like, I don't know, it's the same sort of joy as if I was like kicking it with all my people or just doing whatever other thing that makes me happy. Tennis or something like that,
Has this whole sort of slowdown, forced slowdown, made you rethink, you're from Chicago, I'm from New York. I've only ever lived in major cities, New York or LA, for a time in Philly. Does it make you rethink now, especially having explored the country? Does it make you rethink even living in a city long term? Like, because now that you know that it doesn't, the things that make cities is fully out the question right now, right? Like, we don't have those sort of things other than just still it's a lot of people. And so with it, everything being flat now and kind of having to be forced to slow down and not worried about what's happening on Fairfax or worrying about what's happening in downtown LA, like, do you start to think like, I could just be wherever doing this, if that's going to be the...
Okay. Yes and no.
Okay.
Man, I'm from Chicago. I hate the fucking cold. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I could pack up and move, but I'm not moving back anywhere that's cold. So, like, hey, let's talk about Arizona. You know what I'm saying? We could talk about where else is not cold. I guess parts of Nevada, I just don't want to see snow. That's all. It could be 50, 60 degrees high every day in the winter. I'm fine with that. You know what I'm saying? I love putting on some clothes, but I don't want to see snow and the elements like that. I've gotten used to, I always used to tell people this. When I was in Chicago, mid-January on a weekend, there wasn't anything to do during the day because this was like 03 was the last winter I spent in Chicago. There were no day parties. People didn't do a Saturday 1 o'clock till 7 o'clock day party at a rooftop of a hotel that had an awning. Now there's tons of day parties in Chicago throughout the winter. You don't actually have to sit home and wait for the club to start at night. You can go socialize and be out if that's your thing, right? And so now with all that, I feel like I'm having day parties every day, doing something in California that is sociable to some degree, whether it's a small group of friends, like me and my friends going out and playing tennis, or just like I'm going to go big tuna fishing when this is over, up north. And my buddy is a professional fisherman, and I got another friend of mine, and we all used to work together, who's a sushi chef. So we're going to go big tuna fishing, and then we're going to fillet the fish because they do it on the boat. And then my buddy Vince is going to prepare sushi that evening for us all and make a couple different fish dishes. Yeah. That's the type of thing that I'm in now. Like, that's what I want to spend my time doing.
Is that always something that you were into? Or because obviously as we've known each other and when we started working together doing those LRG photo shoots and even the stuff that you were doing with Daytona in Oregon, it seems like you were always kind of pushing and searching for those sort of frontiers. And was that from day one something you wanted to do, or did those trips actually create that interest?
Well, it's kind of a twofold. When I was doing the LRG stuff, it was like I was trying to make a movie every time. Mm-hmm. So, when we went to Pismo, it was like, man, we're going to go fucking sand dunes, and then we're going to get the dune buggies, And it was more like I wanted the photo shoots to represent a certain amount of adventure. And those adventures were partially crafted around, like, some of my favorite movies, and characters in movies. Yeah. Like, my version of what that would be in fashion, right? Like, aesthetically, the adventure, the snowmobiling, like the stuff we did with Out of Sight in Park City, Utah, all that stuff I think was prepping me for this, but I won't say that it was in a line with it, because back then I wasn't talking about doing any fishing or any like sort of anything like that, but I was always wanting to explore, right? Once I took that road trip, it made me look at things much different. After the road trip, Land Rover did this thing called the 4x4 Fest, 4x4 Fest. And it just happened to be coincidence that it was a month after we got back, 3 weeks after we got back from the road trip. And they were unveiling the brand new 2020 Defender. And you could test drive it. You could do fly fishing. You could do axe throwing. Like, they had all these outdoor adventures listed, right? Yeah. And so I told my buddy B, who went on the trip with me, I was like, dude, we got to go to this. But this time I'm going to bring my camera guy, and, we're going to continue the series that we started on the road. Yeah. That trip then changed everything for me, because not only, and this, just coincidence, did I have a Defender, but this is the lifestyle of the person that has a Defender, fly fishing, mountain climbing, right? So that just kicked open a whole nother train of thought for me of like, I'm going to take my truck on these adventures and kind of go do this thing here. Because these are all things like rock climbing, fishing. I mean, they're all like relatively affordable sports, that you can do with friends that don't cost a ton of money, that you don't feel like are these big like financial commitments. They're family friendly. So like, I can invite one of my friends, and if they have a son, they can more than welcome to come with us, Yeah. And so I think now it's also about, like, as I'm getting older, looking at what I haven't done in life, like how many times have I kicked it, like artist clubs, like, or whatever the fuck else, gone shopping or hunted down some new pair of sneakers or something, only to just give them away later or not give a fuck about them or whatever. So for me, this is like creating a whole new set of memories, right? And Within it, though, I'm learning a lot about new avenues of life. So my old assistant who used to work at LRG with me is now a professional fisherman. He's going to take me on the tuna fishing thing.
Okay.
And he's like, dude, you catch one big tuna, they fillet it, you got like 10 pounds of tuna. I'm like, 10 pounds of tuna. So you realize right now, okay, this is where it all ties back into this, right? You go to the grocery store, it's only 2 per item, right? You go to the meat section, the fish section, whatever, you can only take 2. You cannot buy out the fucking grocery store anymore. And the fish is, I don't know, salmon is usually like, I'm paying like $10-12 for like 2 pieces like this big or something.
Yeah.
Right? You go fishing, big tuna fishing, you pay about $150 a person. That includes the tip. You catch one big fucking tuna, and they can most likely fillet 10 pounds off that minimum. And they vacuum seal it for you, and you can take it home and put it in your freezer. I'd much rather go spend $150 for like 10 to 15 pounds of tuna and put it in my freezer and be ready for like an experience like a quarantine like this, to have like 2 months worth of seafood and be just straight. So part of this thing and exploring and like the fishing and I think the fishing thing for me is going to be something I'm going to really be into because I love seafood, but I don't like paying for seafood. I don't want to go out and get like a sea bass and pay $45 for one meal. I'd rather go catch a sea bass and then have it filleted and have sea bass for like 3 months.
By the way, I mean, speaking of Chilean sea bass, just if people don't know, there's no such thing. So you couldn't actually catch one.
Okay, there we go.
Chilean sea bass is a cod. It's, if you ever spend time on Google and look that shit up, you're going to be like, what the fuck? It's like the weirdest, craziest looking fish ever. It's like but the dude basically just branded it. He was like, it's got a crazy regular name. And he was like, I'm just going to call this bitch Chilean sea bass. Like he just fully made that shit up. So yeah,
That's
I feel you. I feel you. It's funny. And I don't know if this is the same for you, and I'm just going to, whatever, this is me riffing a little bit, but I feel like as it relates to hip hop, like there's this very interesting scenario to me that happened in similar to what you were saying about the Land Rover Defender, right? And how like once you really inhabited that space and the lifestyle, it puts you into a whole different world. I feel like when it comes to even when we think about trying to dress cool when we were younger, and we think about like Nautica and Polo and Carhartt and all of these workwear, and then especially with like Polo, Hilfiger, these aspirational sort of brands, that once you got through the first sort of phase of that in terms of being into it as fashion, which is just like, oh, this looks cool, I'm going to put it on. But then there's this thing that I feel like happens where the ideas and the ideology and the purpose of it starts rubbing off on you, where when you have a pair of tactical pants on, you're just like, oh yeah, what can I use this for? You know what I'm saying?
It's funny that you said that. A friend of mine, he has like a 1985 G-Wagon, but it's a 3-speed. Like stick shift, like no luxury G-Wagon. He had the OG shit, right? And when I grabbed my truck, it's funny, he asked me, he said, did you start dressing differently? And I was like, man, I did. Now, it's somewhat of a cheat code because, we make clothes. So we were already making like the stuff that mimicked the lifestyle, right? Like we were trading into like ripstop cotton and like cargos, and like we made this ripstop cargo like travel suit, right? Like blazer and pant. But he was right. I was like, man, I did start looking at Oyster representing another part of travel. Not only airplanes, not only like comfort, but well, always comfort, but like a different sort of approach to it, you
Yeah.
know? And so you do embody, I think, these brands after a while if you stay true to them. So, it's an interesting thing. Look at Helly Hansen,
Yeah, that's
right?
another one.
Helly Hansen, this is to me probably a very interesting case study. It was around what in our world in hip hop in the early 90s, right? But then if you were only in the hip hop world, you'd be like, man, Helly Hansen fell off, right? Because like, you
Yeah.
know, whatever, after Wu-Tang or whatever, you didn't see it. Like the next trend happened with the next artist wearing something else. Then I remember going to Park City, Utah in like, I don't know, '06 or something. And fuck, big ass Helly Hansen flagship store. And I was like, damn, look at the Helly Hansen store. But it made sense.
Yeah.
Helly Hansen never fell off. It just wasn't trending in our space of like hip hop shit and what was cool. And you know what I'm saying? And so that's a brand that if I would have been into fishing or into like the outdoors thing back then, Helly Hansen would probably be at the top of my list because that's the stuff that they had been doing. That was their specialty, right? But we just borrowed that as a look and put that into the rotation. Like, oh, I need the big overalls. Oh, I need the crazy bucket hat. But then once it was like, no more bucket hat and overalls. Oh, you fucking with Helly Hansen? That shit is dead. But it's not dead. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Polo and Nautica and all that is like, yo, if you was into sailing, I'm sure Nautica never went anywhere for you.
Yeah.
Because you looked at them as like, man, this is what they're about, So it's funny, I try to look at things now, or I try to be open to things, but then also where it ties back to the beginning of what I was into. Sorry, hold on. I gotta plug up this other battery real quick.
Yep.
Hold on. Hopefully this thing. My cord doesn't make it all the way back here.
Ah.
All right, back.
All right. Yeah, I think that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, where it's just kind of like, hip hop can make anything hip hop, right? It can take, like, the first time I got like my Helly Hansen jacket, I straight went to a bait and tackle store that was like 2 towns away to find a colorway that nobody had. So
Dr. J's wasn't ordering. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and even where I grew up, where I was in high school in New Jersey, there was no Dr. J's, so there was no option anyway. So bait and tackle store, like wherever found it, had this crazy. It was like North Carolina colors, like teal and white and dark blue, whatever. But there is a point, and I think this is something that happens, especially as hip hop sort of graduates itself, is like, if you really, this is the thing that we always battle with now with the new sort of world, is like trends come so fast, no one's paying attention really to anything. They look at it from a very surface level. What was hot is now just like 6 months later, it doesn't mean anything, whatever. But if you get into something, like really into it, and like dig in past this thing is cool, and figure out how to make it really a part of you in a real way. Like, you look at someone like, I mean, obviously the Lowlifes, right? Yeah. Polo never went out. Polo's never been out of style, right? And they coming from the culture were able to make it a real lifestyle in a way where it didn't matter what the ebbs and flows of the trends were. It was like, nah, this is what we do. This is what it is. This is what it represents. And that's just kind of what it is. And I sometimes wish, or I hope, for more people to really dig in that way, even if it's not starting their own brand, or even if it's not rapping or making their own music, but taking the slow route and being like, okay, I like this. Yeah, it's hot, but I like this. But now let me dig in and really find out what are the components that makes this thing amazing. What are the pieces that I can learn from, and what can I buy into that makes it kind of like this? I think that's where the leap is for us. Is there's a point where you're like, yeah, this is cool. You know, music's dope, clothes are cool, whatever. But wait a minute, what is that? How is that made? How did that even get here? How do you know, like
Yeah.
when you start exploring those questions, it becomes, I think, a much more interesting journey culturally in general.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. You know, the brands that I love specifically, I mean, like when you mentioned like Polo, the one thing that I think that kept their magic is they never really tried to address it too much. You know, so like I remember when like Tyson Beckford was in the Polo ad and it was like, yo, the black dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, but they didn't go out and jump off the bridge and start putting rappers and all this shit. And they focused on what they were good at,
Yeah.
that lifestyle, and just kept going with that. And even though they had like Purple Label and, you know, all these other things, double RL, that could embody a different lifestyle, they never compromised themselves, you know, and said like, and I don't know why they used Tyson Beckford, I like, you know, or any of that stuff. But when they did, it was like, man, that was a cool dude y'all picked for that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I remember back in the 90s, it was a big deal for him to be in that ad because they were like breaking a color barrier. You know what I'm saying? But it was really about the color barrier. It wasn't like Tyson Beckford hip hop guy.
Yeah.
It was just like a black guy,
Yeah.
you know, that they were kind of going into that world, right? But I really got a lot of respect for brands that can stay focused and don't have to switch it up when they notice like, man, jogging pants are becoming the new shit. Like we're about to make 50% jogging pants, and then this is in, so we're gonna go do this, and this is in. Because then, like, what are you chasing? You know, you should just do what you do or give up. Don't do it. You know. I
Yeah. I
mean,
think
I feel
that's,
like that's that for me.
yeah.
But when I told somebody this, I was like, when listening to music didn't become a job for me, I stopped listening to as much music. Like when I didn't work at LR, because
Yeah.
I realized, man, I had to really listen to a lot of stuff to make sure that I always was trying to get the next wave into the LR world. But I wasn't actually listening to the music for fun anymore. It was like, who's the next dude? Oh, who is he? You know, like me, Kev D, like all of us were always looking. But I can't say I was looking for the right reasons. The same
Yeah.
reasons that I was able to bring like Kanye in, you know, or bring in other early artists when I wasn't so invested. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
Yeah. How, it's funny because I find this question popping up a lot, especially as I talk to people that are of the culture but aren't rappers, producers, or in the music side of things. Is how when you approached and looked at LRG, um, within it, how did you manage sort of the corporate, you know, doing good work and obviously keeping a job with making sure the culture itself was represented properly whenever you presented something or felt like, or LRG presented something to the world?
I mean, there was no corporate. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? I mean,
Yeah.
so like that probably, I always say I could have never done what I did anywhere else.
Mm.
You know, like it wouldn't have worked. I couldn't have called up somebody and said, we need to mess with this guy because of this, this, and that. And then, he talked to his partner and then says like, okay, cool. Like, let's make it happen. It doesn't work that way. Right. So it's gotta be a little bit of like some homeboy shit and less corporate and trying to figure it out to get that best like natural energy out of something, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so yeah, the balance, like especially at LR, I mean, there was a point where they brought in a VP, you know, and shit went south, you know, because he thought he knew more than he did and wanted to like put skateboarding in front of like like rap shit and all the hip hop stuff, and kind of was trying to divide what it was, you know. That was when corporate became a problem. Was somebody stepped in who had no knowledge, and unfortunately, the powers that be allowed him to do some things that were detrimental to the brand, and that's just the truth, you know. So they fired me when it got really corporate, and I tell people I didn't leave, I got fired. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm one of the only people to tell you, oh yeah, they fired me. It's cool. Because nobody leaves anywhere. I always say this. If somebody ever tells you, like, you're like, hey man, what you up to? Oh, are you over there? No, I left. I'm looking for other. No, they didn't leave. They got fired. They just didn't want to tell you. Because you only leave places when you got another situation lined up.
Yeah.
You don't just quit to be doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? You usually get fired. So I tell people they fired me. They told me my position was being terminated and this and that, and you know. But it's like, all right, man, cool. Terminate my position. But it was like, that was a blessing in disguise. Because for that same year they fired me, Don C had started Just Don and was building that. And we were talking, and I was watching what he was doing. And it was exciting, and it was new territory, you know, and we were old friends. And another friend of mine who was working with them was like, we were all talking. So I felt something else that was about to happen that made me feel like the same feeling when I met the LR guys, you know. And for me in my career, it's all about being maybe not the first person, but the second or third at the table. I like to create from a very raw, bare bones standpoint where I have to do multiple things to take something from here to here. Don't bring me into something when you up here. It's no fun.
Yeah.
I'd rather put the grind in and do a bunch of shit to reap the rewards of like, we did it, man. We did it on the bare bones minimum system, you know? So corporate, I can't do corporate. It's never done right by me, you know? And if I maybe had a more political answers to things, it could work, you know? So you go work at, let's say, any of the big companies, Nike, Adidas, Puma, whatever, right? And some product comes out and they're like, let's say this is the product. And they're like, oh, here's the new so-and-so. Now, I'm the type of person who might be like, man, that's whack. But do you know if you say that in one of those meetings, you're terminated.
Yeah.
They want you to say like, I think that can be improved upon. That's what whack means. So it's the delivery, right? Like, I've been in the meetings. They'll do like this. You know, I think we've got a good lead on this, but we can improve here. Oh, motherfucker, you basically want me to start over? Like, you just ripped my shit up, but you didn't say it was whack. So, like, you always got to be ready for those corporate situations on the lingo, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember when I was at LR, there was a couple things in a couple meetings where I'd said the wrong thing, you know? It's just really like the communication when you're at a corporate company, you know? So, like, you have to be able to give constructive criticism if you have something to say that's not like thumbs up, right? Yeah. And with LR, I couldn't give constructive criticism in the way they wanted me to. You know, I just knew how to give it to them raw.
Yeah.
Like, because that's
do you see that shifting at all with as the culture graduates more and more people into spaces, not just in like entry-level positions, but now obviously positions of power, especially the entire sort of Chicago era in all these different places. Do you see that changing, or do you think that it just bends to what works?
Nah, I think it's like more corporate now. You know, it's more corporate because you can't like, I mean, there's things that went on while I was there. And I don't say went on like in a bad way, just the way we would interact with each other. Yeah. Like it's just friends who worked together that were young. that, bro, it could never happen that way again. You know what I'm saying? Like some of the nicknames that we have for each other would just be like,
yeah, like that can't happen.
Okay, my name is Woody.
Yeah.
Jonas used to be like, "What's up, Dick?" And it's like, but yo, I knew what that was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a joke. He knew I would be an asshole once in a while, so he would call me Dick. But it's like, yo, you playing off a Woody, because what is a Woody? It's a hard dick, right? You know what I'm saying? And like some degree of jokes or whatever. Man, do you know if somebody said that now, you could take the whole company down. Yeah. This man called me a dick. Sue him for $10 million. Now I'm rich. Now I'm retired. Like, that's the climate we in right now. Nobody could roll that off and be like, you know what? Fuck you. And crack a joke back and go back to work. They'll go home and be thinking about this shit, tell somebody, and somebody be like, you should sue them. You know? How do
you balance that at your company? You know, because you pulled from a bunch of the crew, obviously, and they're all heads. But if you hire some young, 22-year-old intern from USC or whatever, like they may be the one who sues. How do you balance that?
Well, we are a small organization, so it's just myself, my partner Millhouse, and some of the old crew that help contribute to Oyster. Yeah. But we're not in a point where we're hiring a bunch of people. We're a very, very small indie brand. 95% of everything we do is on our website, and to be honest, if I did bring in somebody else, I don't behave in an inappropriate manner. You know what I'm saying? At all. I don't say shit to people that's like can be taken in any type of way. That's just not who I am. So I don't really see that issue happening, but it always is somebody else's interpretation of how you're behaving. So maybe I could do something that I didn't realize is offensive, and they could be offended. The only thing that I could hope somebody would say or do is be able to address me about it.
Yeah.
And know that if I made somebody feel uncomfortable, that they could say this without losing their job, without being like put under a red light, without being looked at as like, man, you're gonna try to take me out. Like I wouldn't walk around with a black cloud over or try to not give somebody an opportunity because I'm worried about my behavior. If that's the case, I don't need to be in the game. I need to be doing something that has nothing to do with interacting with other people. Yeah. And building people up. Like I should go do, I don't know, maybe clean pools or something. You know what I'm saying? Something where it's like, which I would do that too, because I believe that's probably very therapeutic, Yeah. But you don't have to come into contact with a bunch of people. You don't have to deal with telling people, go back and try that again. And then it's just different
unless you're in a porno, then it's a whole, saying the pool cleaning guy always ends up turning up.
Yeah, exactly.
Switching gears a little bit, you've been a part of these eras. You've been a part of the early streetwear era, the like transition into the hipster sort of space, this jump that you, Don, Virgil, everybody kind of pushed, which was like, this is, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but I do feel like there's a bit of a, and it might be again because of the era, like a lot of what became popular was basically like East Bay catalog fashion. It was like, how can I take these blanks, these really sort of interesting things that we used to find in the back of the East Bay catalog and turn it into couture? And you kind of see it now, I guess, the athleisure sort of space. With as crazy as this pandemic is, if you were to just predict because you've been paying attention, what do you think fashion-wise comes out of this sort of space? I mean, people were already ironically wearing face masks, right? Like that was kind of a thing because it's been going on in China and Japan and Korea for so long.
Right.
Like, what do you think comes out of of this that makes it, because everything has been changed. Motherfuckers out here wearing plastic gloves all the, like latex gloves all the time. Like there's all this sort of stuff we've added on. What do you think comes out of this that becomes now like?
Well, what's funny is when we started Oyster, everything that we made, like I haven't worn jeans or like traditional pants since 2014, somewhere around there. Now, I have developed for the brand like a parachute pant, like flight pant. We have like 100% cotton, like ripstop cotton pant, that doesn't have elastic or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think really one thing I'm taking from all this is you got a bunch of people now working from home, right? So do I need a suit if I'm working from home? Do I need like crisp white shirts? Maybe I need like one or two for these type of conversations if we got to do group conference calls and things like that, But if I'm doing a conference call like this and I got my shit all buttoned up, I might have shorts on and no socks because I only need you to see from like right up here, from the chest up, right?
Yeah.
So I think if anything, you may find more of the casual stuff even getting more popular amongst people who it hadn't hit yet, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a whole wave of cozy and sweats and this and that. But I remember I seen one of my boys say, like, they were in Paris this last year and they said, oh, I couldn't get in the club with sweatpants. I guess I'm going home. Now, the year before then, they could get in the club with sweatpants. But the sweatpant era died. It was kind of like back to the luxury again. But I think now it's going to go right back around again to a more comfortable setting because do I need a pair of $1,000 jeans right now? No. The fuck am I going to do with those? Do I need a $500 sweater? No. What am I going to do with that? So now I think for me, anything we're trying to make with Oyster always has to be versatile. You know what I'm saying? So this track pant, right? With the flags and all this. Sorry, call was coming in.
Oh, okay.
This track pant with the flags and everything. It's lined with cotton. You could wear it. I wear it out. I wear it out to kick it. But I ride my bike in it. And I go work out in it. And then I wash it. And I hang dry it. And I can go do multiple things in it. It's not just, I can wear this track pant to go biking. Or I can only wear this track jacket out to the club. And like in a sporty look. No, I want my shit to be like, see that anorak we made? Wear it biking, wear it to play tennis, then wash it and put on your Timbs and jeans and go out in it. Because that's what I remember growing up with products. Was like, there was no compression tights and shit like that and all that stuff where like you looked at it only for the gym, Like if you think about it, you go to the gym now, people don't wear sweatshirts and sweatpants. They wear like technical stuff.
Yeah.
But that technical stuff, it really doesn't have like the look outside of the gym. Like, I don't want to wear tights with shorts over it when I'm going out. That's not my look. Like maybe if I'm coming from the gym, but once I get home and take a shower and change, I'm not going back out with that look on.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure whatever we're doing is like, that anorak that I'm riding my bike in, you're going to see me in the streets with that on doing regular shit. So that's, I know, our goal. And I feel like more people are going to be looking for things that they can get more out of. But I'm not talking about more stunt. I'm talking about more practicalities with the product that they're spending money on.
Yeah, I think we're entering this space that has already happened, right? Like we got real fancy. There was an era, I remember talking to one of my grand uncles, and it's like, yo, even when we come back to the suit conversation, like they wore suits. Them motherfuckers wore suits to everything. You know what I'm saying? Like there was never a reason not to wear a suit. When we think about like it's funny that you mentioned the jean conversation because it's the same thing with me. There was this point, and I don't know what happened, but there was this point where I was just like, I'm not wearing jeans anymore, like just in general. Now I have one pair that I wear, but they are 100% cotton 501s. like straight vintage 501s. Yeah, denim, not elastic in denim, just straight denim. And that shit was workwear. Like that was, you were wearing jeans for a purpose. You weren't wearing jeans because it's like, oh, I got them shredded in this way where I'm about to go to the club and everyone can see my ashy knees. It's like, nah, I'm rocking these. And I do think that that is an interesting idea that we may get back to that level of practicality, like you said. Because at a certain point, people are going to get bored with wearing a button-up shirt and drawers. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they're gonna, and when they do get outside, it's gonna be like, I wonder if there's this weird sort of because we at least got another month in this. And I wonder if there's sort of like weird mix and match thing that's going to happen where because of everybody's conference calls, their tops are going to become very professional, but then the bottom is all play. Like if there's this weird space where you just are going to have motherfuckers wearing, you know, swim trunks and flip flops and whatever else with like a button up. And that's just is.
Yo, if you ever do this with Currency,
yeah,
ask him who put him up on the sweatpants and the button up look together.
Yeah.
That was like, man, I was doing that in 08. Sweats with the button up shirt. Yeah. Because it was like, oh, this Steez is just super comfortable, it's chill. But to me, that essence for me is like Linkin Park. That's where I grew up. So that's really a look that we was doing forever. But yeah, that's what we'll kind of tailor in, you know, sort of this like comfort mixed with style, you know, because I can't see you needing these things that are just like, who needs the $5,000 leather? Like, unless you're wealthy or rich. But I would hope that this thing is showing people that, like, man, if you got $5,000 right now and you ain't working.
Yeah. You know do you think, speaking about that specifically, and then we can leave the subject because I don't want to keep you too long. Do you think that trashes the secondary market, like with all these StockX and like all of these places that have built it off of this hype and built it off of this, you know, I got to be seen in these sort of J's and these sort of things. Like, do you think there's about to be a big, because it's felt like a bubble for a couple of years now as it relates to that market. And now a gang of people don't have jobs and there's nowhere to actually wear that shit. And there's no one to buy it. So like, you know, do you think that there's about to be this really big hit that's about to happen across the board where, yeah, there are not lines in front of Supreme. The craziest shit I seen, I was in San Francisco, like maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And not even 4 weeks ago, and got off the BART from the airport, was just going to find a cool brunch spot, middle of town. And as I'm walking up, I mean, number one, the homeless problem there is crazy, but like homeless problem is just insane. And it's just nothing but shanty towns and people and whatever. And then as I'm walking to the spot, there's just a line for Supreme around all of this chaos, like around all of this, just a lot, like a singular, everyone's in file, nice and orderly, and around them is nothing but chaos around it. It's fucking disorder and just like the worst of what America can provide for people. And I wonder if now that shit, at least for a temporary period, is going to be fully sort of reset, because you're not going to wait in that line for that fucking Supreme because, like you said, why do I need it? And I'm so much more
different though with the kids.
Okay.
Right? Like I think there's, you know, man, it's when 9/11 hit and I was at home in Chicago and the first plane hit the tower in the morning when I woke up and I saw it on the news. Do you know what I did? Got on a bike ride and rode my bicycle. Like, oh damn, that's fucked up. And then I saw my boy DJ Word.
Shouts out the Word, man.
Shout out the Word. He probably don't even remember this. I saw him he was pulled over on Lakeshore Drive, and everybody was leaving downtown, you know, because I think the second plane had hit by then.
Yeah.
So they were clearing cities out. Get the fuck out of the big city. Go home. Like, no downtown. If that happened now, there's no way I would get on my bike and like go out. Like, I would be glued to the news.
Yeah.
But that was 20 some years ago. You know what I'm saying? And I was 20 something. So I think as you get older, your compassion for things changes, you know. And I'm not saying like anybody who's young doesn't have compassion and doesn't look at it, because I'm sure there was, for as many people like me at that time that went out and got on their bike or saw that happen and tried to continue like things hadn't changed, there was also people sitting back who were like, fuck, like everything's changed, you know. So yeah, if there'll still be kids waiting in line, you know what I'm saying, because they're not looking at this the same way.
Yeah, but will they have the money to move? You know what I'm saying? Like the big thing is we're talking supply and demand now. Like we're not simply talking about the need to do it. It's just like once they sit in line and pay that joint, like who's gonna buy it on the other end? You know, because now we don't have the same, and we're talking about, you know, especially between the U.S. and China, where I'm sure you're on Fairfax now and you see so many middle-class Chinese people just going there spending a gang of money. It's like, that's not about to happen. So then what happens? Like, what happens to how all of those places sort of, because that's what I'm talking about. It just feels like there's about to be this big hole. Even once we come back, everybody gets back to work, everybody gets,
it is,
you know, like where it's just going to just be like, yeah, I'm not, like you said, why spend the $5,000 on a jacket that it's just not going to feel worth it?
You know, man, I mean, I think that's what a lot of people are nervous about, right? Is like, what's going to happen? We don't really know. But, I mean, it seems like you'll have a percentage of people that just keep going, you know? Like, so, yeah, man, you're going to go and stand in that line and you're going to sell that Supreme, but you may not sell it for the same price. Yeah. So I was looking at this website that sells Defenders. They do auctions, right? And there was a U.S. legal, like 90-something Defender yellow. Man, this thing is beautiful. The auction, it hit like 20 grand. And it's about to be over. And most of these trucks,
they're like in the hundreds.
97. Well, they're usually 100 when you like put some work into them. Yeah. But that same truck with no work in it would at least go for around 45. But I was talking to the guy who was like pays attention to all the auctions, and I was like, man, this thing is only 20 right now. And he was like, dude, I think it's because of the, you know, the state of what everything's in. Who wants to buy a $20,000 truck right now?
Yeah.
You know, because a Defender is a luxury. It's not a necessity. Like if you need a truck, you could probably go buy a used truck for $5,000 if you need to move stuff around. If you were like hauling cargo or things like that.
Yeah, and you would get it, and you would get like a F-150, something that you know you could just beat the fuck up too. You wouldn't want to just be hauling around in a Defender.
Yeah, in a Defender. So like seeing that also was very eye-opening, because it's like, you know, this is something that's sought after, and this thing isn't moving because the people who would spend the money, they're not spending the money. They're like, let me think about this purchase.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Let me figure this thing out right now. Now, the other interesting thing that one of the old dudes at LR told me, Robert, was like, yo, when there's blood on the streets, you gotta get it. So when the economy crashed in 2008, prior to it crashing, that whole top of the year, I got a global brand manager title, and they sent me everywhere, from Asia to India to like everywhere. And there was blood on the streets. People weren't putting up POP in store. They weren't visiting retailers. They weren't asking what's going on with our product in the store. Can we get this section? Can we give you a build out? What can we do to increase our sales? I spent 8, 9 months on the road shaking hands and kissing babies, doing that with our retailers so that in September, when shit fucking hit the fan, we were pretty well positioned within our accounts, And Robert's whole thing was, we got to make the moves when the others can, because we could get this realty. We could spend the money. We got it. But the other guys, they can't even ship on time. They're going to be out of here because the retailers now want trust. It's not about what's hot. It's about who can deliver on time, who could be on the floor. It's the fundamentals of like the business, not cool. So LR was able to have another resurgence of having good business, even though we had kind of like the cool boat had left, like everybody knew who we were. Not that we weren't cool, but we weren't the underground, like, oh man, what's that? Like, oh, that's the hottest shit. There was a bunch of new brands who did that. But those new brands in the economy folding had a different challenge, you know, because now those kids who were pumping the hype, they couldn't even buy the shit. You know what I'm saying? And the stuff they could buy, maybe the retailers weren't getting it because they didn't trust the brand. So why am I going to spend all this money trying to bring in whatever brand and you people are going to be shipping 8 weeks late? I'm not doing that. We got customers coming in and they're circling the racks like sharks looking for something new. So like whoever's first to that floor, they get that sale. So, I think that's something that may happen now where if you continue to do wholesale business, if people are shopping right now, everybody has time on their hands. So if you're sitting there looking at like Grail every day, or you're looking at like some brand every single day, you're going to really notice how much that shit is sitting.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be no call to action to buy it because you're going to be like, and that shit is still there 6 months later or 5 months later. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time. And I think people are going to want more out of their purchase. Like, I don't want to make anything that you have to dry clean. I don't want to. Why? I want everything that Oyster makes, cold water wash, hang dry. You can put it in a dryer if you want, but you can also wash that shit in the lake. You don't got to worry about anything. You know what I'm saying? You can wash it in your sink and hang it. Because why would I want you to buy something that you take to the dry cleaner and all of a sudden they give it to you and it's 8 sizes too small, or they mess something up and it's like, you spent all this money on this thing from me and it fucked up at the long run. So I think now you just gonna want more out of everything. Like, what's funny? You see all these brands making these like wool luxury socks, right? Like, oh, we got this wool cashmere sock. We got this. But yo, bro, when I went to Walmart,
merino wool,
and seen these that I'm
all
hanging on right now on my porch,
merino wool all day, every day,
steel blue, like with this loop. Like, I'm sorry, ain't nobody making socks like this out of Italy. Nobody. I don't give a fuck what you tell me. You cannot sell me that the Italians make better socks than these guys that are making them for people in sub-zero weather. Number one, I tested these going through like Wyoming and stuff. So it's really about, this $8 sock versus that same sock coming from an established brand that wants to borrow from that outdoor space and saying this is now 100 a pair.
Yeah,
like I'm laughing at you, 100, huh?
Yeah, it's something that I've also kind of experienced too. Is just like, I need shit to last. Like all the fly shit that shrinks when you, like you said, oh man, I put it on warm water instead of cold water and then it got fucked up or whatever. Like it's just not worth it anymore. I only got one more question for you though, so it's all good. Obviously you come from the culture, you come from hip hop, and you've obviously, run through the fashion space because of it. What have you learned from hip hop that you use in your everyday life?
And you know what? People may like look at this comment and think it's weird. I would say like originality. But I think where that instills for me is because the era of hip hop that I came up in, you had X Clan at the same time as you had like Wu Tang, at the same time as you had like Busta, at the same, you know, you had all these different groups that all weren't the same thing with the same sound.
Yeah.
And it was being original, right? So now when I look at it, I see kind of less of that. So when I draw from, when I say being original, I mean it being original from like the 90s.
Yeah.
Not original in the 2000s. Because now, a lot of things seem programmed. So when you have something like Griselda come out, it's like, damn, there's a million more Griseldas in the wing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That shit ain't dead. It's just not the popular. And so every time something like that comes around, people are blown away, which is interesting because that space is, that's the foundation, you know, that's the foundation of it. It's like when everybody's doing this, hip hop used to do this.
Yeah.
And so I like to say, like, man, I take that like originality, like being yourself, like not anti-system or any of that stuff, but just like, this is who I represent, and I'm comfortable in representing that if everybody else is not on the same page as me. So when I see like, you know, the sneaker thing is a very interesting thing now because everybody is content on having the same sneakers. And they love it.
It's so crazy.
When I was coming up, man, I did not want to be standing next to the motherfucker with the same shoes as me.
Ever.
That wasn't, I didn't put my feet in a circle taking a picture of us all wearing whatever sneaker because we got the same ones on.
Yeah.
That was goofy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting now seeing it because that's what people, it's better like, oh, he's doing that, let me do that too. Not, we all got this, so let me do this over here and try to put you up on something new. Hip hop used to put me up on new fashion all the time and looks, introduce me to things that I was unknown of. Now we rapping about the same thing, the same brands, because we'd rather tell you, look at this Gucci that you already seen. You already know about this. Look at the Louis, you already seen this. You already seen all this shit. But you keep reinforcing the same thing. But nobody's like pulling the rabbit out of the hat. Like, look at this that you don't know nothing about. So like a lot of it, the confidence has left the game to me. People's individual confidence in their style.
This will actually be the last question.
Hey, you could ask like 10 more.
No, I got you. Do you think that that is because of when we were coming up, the internet was not some shit that we could look at, right? Like everything had to gestate locally. You were fresh locally, right? But if you, maybe you got the Source magazine and you got to see what cats were wearing in New York, or maybe you got, you watch music videos to see what cats were wearing in LA or in Florida, whatever. But it was like, there was two things happening at the same time. You subscribed to the culture as a whole, but you also kept this very local sort of idea. Cats sounded different, so they had to dress different, and they talked about different things. And it was used as this way to explore all these different spots, right? But now, nothing gets a chance to just bubble. It immediately goes from no one knew about it yesterday to everyone knows about this today. Right? Like everybody.
Yeah.
And so what happens is like the Travis Scott Jordans or the OVO Jordans or Off-White collabs, like they immediately just become the coveted thing across the board because everyone's looking on Hypebeast at the same time. Everyone's looking at StockX at the same time. And so it keeps the interesting things that would have happened. Like the west side of Chicago was different than the south side of Chicago, right? And now it's kind of different, but kind of not. Like, you know, there's a Chicago that people talk about that's a much larger sort of circle. When you're like, when you were coming up, those two things were not the same.
No, they were totally different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, living on the north side was different than everything else.
Yeah.
You know, the progression of the north side was different. And I'm not saying like anybody was ahead or anything, but I'm gonna tell you, like, your choice of wearing stuff was much more acceptable. You could be up north and wear pink.
Yeah.
You know? So like when Ye was talking about the pink polo, I was wearing pink polos when I was 12. Like, that wasn't a big thing for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, none of the stuff. Now it's all the melting pot, right? It's all a melting pot of one, which I like to. I think it's a double-edged sword. I like to see how open people are now.
Exactly.
It is like somebody says something and we can all move towards it and look at it and appreciate it. But I always ask, do people know what they like anymore? Or are they just championing something from a big guy? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so-and-so said it, so like, fuck yeah, dude, keep going. But do you really like that? Or are you scared to say that you don't like it? Because somebody's going to be like, what do you mean you don't like that? You're a hater. Like, huh?
Yeah.
I just said I didn't like it. That's all.
Yeah. You know, I think we'll end it here, but like, I hope that what this time allows is everybody is forced to have enough space and to slow down enough, right? Because there is no cool Instagram right now. If you're posting pictures on Instagram from some fly shit, it's like, this is where I was last week. I mean, last month.
That's
3 months ago.
Doing. They like, well, not everybody, but I'm seeing stuff like
a year ago.
Yo, it was all good just a week ago, you know, and they're showing like parties and stuff. But then, interesting enough, I saw something that Virgil posted, and it was like, when I get back to DJing, 85% of my set is going to be like jazz, you know. And immediately I was just looking at the comments, man, and it was just like, I love the fact that he's about to try to put people on to something new. I love that. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm telling you I'm about to be doing. This is my vibe. What's kind of gets a little bit under my skin is if I was to really look through everybody, probably like, yeah, fuck yeah. Blah, blah. It's like, dude, come on, fam. You wasn't listening to no jazz. Like, if I would have tried to play some jazz a week ago, you probably would have dissed it. Not me personally.
Yeah.
But like, if there was a jazz club and a hip hop club, who would have gone to that jazz club?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of the monkey see, monkey do, but you gotta keep pressing forward. You know what I'm saying? So I like seeing it, but I don't like the unauthentic response to some things that
but maybe it's not inauthentic. I mean, I think maybe what happens is when people get the chance to just slow the fuck down, like you said, they actually have to make decisions. Here's the crazy thing, right? Music streaming is down right now.
Really?
Yeah.
How's that?
Because if given real options, right? You're not going to work, you're not going to the club, you're not in the Uber going to the club, you're not at your homie's house, you're not in any of these spaces. What you decide to listen to, so much of streaming is driven by club music. There is no club. Are you actually listening to that shit at the crib?
Well, I did get that from what he was saying.
And that's kind of what
like,
I mean.
Yeah, like what would you be listening to all day at home? You're not going to be listening to rap music left and right and fucking club joints. You know, you definitely got to evolve in your taste, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
That's one of the things that people get out of this is evolving in taste, you know, and that's really the biggest thing that I want to try to get across with whatever I'm doing is a certain level of taste, not hype, taste. You know, whether it's with clothing, whether it's what I spend to do with my free time, you know what I'm saying, is a taste level, but a taste level that's attainable. So it's not something that's like, man, look at me go on a yacht and go do X, Y, and Z and have a fucking water slide that goes into the ocean, to a jet ski, to my butler, and then like, look at me.
Yeah.
No, it's like the deep sea tuna fishing. You know what I'm saying? Going to Pismo Beach and getting a jet ski there and being okay with not balling. You know what I'm saying? And just being like a regular person.
But see, I think that the reality is what you've discovered in your life, and especially discovering now, is that balling does never his equal taste. You know, like this chase for the bag, outside of just being like, okay, my basics are covered, outside of that has never meant that you knew what the next step was once you had that bag, right? Like the kind of house you buy, the neighborhood you decide to live in, those quick vacations, especially being in, think about how many people in California, in LA specifically, all this money, all these very famous people, and they don't even know that you can go dune buggying at Pismo, right? Like they don't even know that you could be paddle boarding in the marina, or you could go out to Catalina and just go kick it with fucking buffalo, or go whale watching, or do any of these things that are actually very affordable and very fulfilling and interesting. But what do they know? Like, oh, okay, all I wanted to do was have just parties and girls in my house, so I'm just going to do that in a bigger house with a bigger party. And then they wonder why that shit gets boring.
I cannot get people to leave Los Angeles area to go eat, right? So one of my things that I just been realizing is that people don't want to leave the 30-mile radius. You know, like if they live in West Hollywood and I'm like, hey, meet me in Santa Monica or the marina. I got this place to take you to. Where? The marina? Like what? Like you want me to go to the marina? Like they act like it's that far.
Yeah. But there is traffic.
Man, there's traffic everywhere though. Sure. Like, I mean, but how much time can you spend in one place? You know what I'm saying? Right. Like telling somebody, man, what's up with the marina? And then, I mean, okay, I lived in Studio City and you can get to the marina in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's worth the 45 minutes when you get there. Especially if you're not from California. My vision of California is beaches, mountains, sailing, seafood shacks, like not Melrose. You know what I'm saying? Not Nobu. Like, you know how many other places got good seafood besides Nobu? But people come here and act like, man, I'm going to Nobu. I'm like, oh, isn't there one of those in New York? Isn't there one of those? Like, what you come all the way here for that for? But people don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They don't want. So I hope that this whole thing gets people to be like, you know what? Oh, I posted this lobster burrito, breakfast burrito from this place called Slapfish. It's in Huntington Beach. I've never been there, but it's been on my list for like 2 years. But I've explored up and down the coast and been to a bunch of other restaurants I found on Yelp and just like popped up there. Like, let me go try this. Yo, I posted this burrito place, I think yesterday or today, and was like, yo, this is not in LA, but I can't wait to take this thing. Do you know how many people responded to me? Like, where is this? I'm like, Huntington. They're like, I'm going to take the trip. Because now you're looking at this like, man, okay, I haven't been to Huntington. I probably should go. Because now we realize all the shit we took for granted. All the time we just stayed in our little space and didn't go do this. Now I'm like, oh, life is completely different after this. Like, I'm going to pick up a ton of new hobbies. a ton of new things that I feel like are interesting. Some things maybe they won't be when I get to actually trying them for the first time. I might not find them as exciting as I thought they would be. But I'm at least gonna try. I'm at least gonna look at things, through a different set of lenses after this, because I was caught up too, even with Oyster, trying to I don't know, get my space, on the board.
Yeah.
Like everybody else got a space now. Like, where do I find myself in the mix of things? But since this, I feel very comfortable in the space we're in, and blessed that we're in the space that we're in, because I've talked to friends that are, having to go through tougher times because they got bigger companies and they got employees, and it's not just about them, And luckily for Oyster, it's very, 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 very small. So our set of issues are much different, you know. So yeah, this is a very interesting time, but I think everybody's going to come out on the better side of things.
Yeah, I hope so. I think they need to take the opportunity to want to come out on the better side and not kind of, everybody's worried about the election and everybody's worried about, pushing through and not maintaining the status quo, right, at the political side. But it's just like, you need to be focused on the status quo in your own life and what you can do to expand your thoughts, ideas, actions,
right,
coming out of this, and really how you can just be not only a better version of yourself, but even a more sort of fulfilled version. Like you said, take that trip down the coast early on a Saturday, go to the lobster burrito spot and enjoy it and see what else, other places have to offer.
Especially down there, right? Because it's like, man, I haven't been to Huntington Beach for years. Like, my aunt and uncle had a place in Long Beach. And so we'd go, when I was a kid, I'd bring my skateboard out. I'd go skate in Huntington and Seal Beach.
Yeah.
Man, I haven't been to Seal Beach or Huntington Beach in 20 years.
That's crazy.
And I'm sure it's developed and there's tons of shit to do down there that if I went there, I'd be like, damn, I got to put Huntington Beach on the list of places to go besides to go eat.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just go to the beach while I'm down there and, pack a picnic or something like that. So there's definitely, I think, more opportunity to become one with things that you weren't dialed into before, and I know personally, I'm going to try to take advantage of that. And I hope other people take advantage of the things that maybe they were thinking about doing or that they weren't, that they get invited to, hey, you want to come go fly fishing? And somebody's like, man, I've never done that before. I'm down. I'm going to go do that. Because what's the alternative to that? You doing the same thing you've been doing every month for the last couple of years? So, this is I'm good with kind of where everything is at, while I'm having to sit still and feeling like I'm going to change for the better or get to know myself even better about this. I had to stop smoking weed during this time.
Wow.
Because I'm going to sit around and smoke weed all day and just be blown and high and eating all my food in the refrigerator and you know what I'm saying? And just sitting around. Hell no, I'm not doing that. Now, when this is over, maybe I'm smoking again.
Yeah.
But while I'm quarantined to the house, I hate to say it, that's the last thing I want to do.
No, I think that's where we end it. You're already seeing improvements, and I hope that everybody else takes the time to really think about what they want to do when they get out of this, but thank you, man. Thank you for being on the podcast. We figured out a couple of technical difficulties, but we got there. So
yeah, no doubt. I had to read down that Skype app and get my lighting right and stuff. And